Hey, this is Art Shimko, aka Shimko. Check out my new album, Lunawaii, on all streaming platforms. And you're watching the legend himself, the coolest cat in the land, John the Ninja.
Ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? It's John the Ninja back again, always live in the dojo, aka the Dojang, aka the John the Ninja Studios. And you know this, man. Once again, I got Art Shimko here for part 2 of our interview to hear about his amazing life. I had so much fun. It was going so long, we had to break it up into 2 parts, which is great, which is fine. I'm enjoying it. So back to Art. Good sir, welcome again, entering the dojo. You must be a yellow belt at this point. So
Yeah.
when you're at the station, you're at MGK, you've been producing, you've been allowed to do voice work, and you've actually become a DJ, you actually had some time at Chikara wrestling in Philadelphia. Now, I've gone to CZW school, and I can vouch everything that happens in that wrestling ring is real. But what really pushed you to go, you know what, I really want to do this? Because what a lot of people don't know, especially when you really commit to wrestling, is it's a full time. It's above everything else, and you got to commit to everything you do towards it. So what made you say, you know what, let me give it a shot?
I don't remember if it was on Facebook or a message board. Chikara had their dojo up in up like kind of like Northeast Philly. I remember seeing that they had like a 7-week like training program for like $249, and I thought, well, that's not really a lot of money, for a training program like a beginner program. Usually you have to spend like, I don't know, $5,000, whatever. You have to spend thousands for like a course if you go in like full on. But this is just like this was sort of like a get your feet wet, and if after 7 weeks you're still into it, then you can go to next level of the dojo and pay however much you're going to pay and commit that time and effort to the training. I don't even know if I wanted to actually be a pro wrestler. I mean, if I got a match or two, that'd be interesting. But I really wanted to learn like the inner mechanics of it. I trained in martial arts when I was younger. I was like 13, and I did that for a few years. So like learning that, like the mechanics of like fighting and techniques and stuff, and especially with wrestling, like just so much that goes into it. That's based on actual like amateur wrestling and like techniques that they've come up with over time from whatever. I was like 43 when I wanted to try it, but I was like, well, I'm just gonna try it. Like I wasn't even in the best shape. Like if I was in the shape I was in now, I'd probably have a better time doing it. But I was like not in the best shape either. But I thought, well, I'll try it. When I signed up for it, I was like, all right, I have a few weeks until the course starts. So I was like, let me do some kind of training. So I was doing the DDP yoga, which I still have and do once in a while. So I was like, let me do this like a few times a week. It was a beginner's course, but everybody I talked to there practically had already been training at other schools. Like they trained at CZW, they trained at ROH, they trained at whatever school, Monster Factory, whatever schools were around, that people went to. So some people were already like seasoned. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, I'm a total novice. I think I'm the only one who's a total novice. So, I mean, right away you're doing forward roll drills in the ring. You're doing all these drills, walking like a crab kind of thing, and just all these kind of forward flips and rolling, just all the stuff where you're like, oh yeah, I've seen this in wrestling, especially Chikara, because they have that lucha style, and that international style. It's like very whatever, very move based in a way, very fluid move based kind of thing. So I was like, oh my God. It was like 2 hours a week, 2 hours on Saturday morning. I think like 10 to 12 or something. I was like the early class. And then there was like another class after. And I think it was early. I think it was definitely an early class.
Tell me about your first bump, because oh my God. So the first day, for everyone that doesn't know, usually, because me and Art got real lucky, with how we were indoctrinated, but the first day for wrestling students is a tryout. You have to earn your way in, and then you build up to what they call the bump or the fall. And I'll never forget this. My first couple of bumps were fine. That you're learning how to fall properly so you don't F yourself up. But I remember my first running bump. Like you see it all the time. The wrestlers they take a hit and they fall down running. I rocked my shit so hard.
Man.
because
Oh man.
I thought you were still running, and then when you just fall down. Apparently, when you do a running bump, you stop and then you fall. I didn't know that, so I went first. This is me, woo, and right there is my head, and then boom.
Oh.
And at the time, his name's Joe Gacy. He's with WWE now. God
Oh
bless
yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah. Joe
Congratulations.
Case.
He looked me dead in the eye and he said, I want to work for WWE. So he made it. But I remember I hit the ground, I rocked myself, and everyone stopped and he goes, you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. He's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. He's like, okay. Next time, stop. Okay. I swear to God, I did that every time. I even stuttered. So tell me about the first bump's usually the hardest. So what was your first bump like? Did you rock yourself?
I did. One of the drills we were doing was because you'd be in the one corner and then you do the drill, go to the other corner, and you get back onto the ring apron, and it's like a whole like line of people doing it. So one of the drills we had to do was the back bump drill. You go and you walk into the middle of the ring, put your arms out, do the back bump, get right back up, walk out the ring, and then getting back in line for the next drill, which is probably another back bump. So the policy is, I'm not sure how it is with CZW school, but I'm sure they have similar thing, in other dojos and stuff, but you end up getting hurt or getting sick, whatever. It's like, you could sit down on the bleachers for like a minute, but if you sit down on the bleachers, like you're done for the day. Like you could be like 10 minutes in, and if something happens and you have to sit down, like that's it. You can't participate. It sucks because then you got to sit there for the next hour, 50 minutes or however long. So that's another thing to like motivate you to like, just suck it up and get back in, get back into it. So I come out and I do a bump. I think the first bump I did was okay. Like it was sloppy, but like Mike Quackenbush and Ophidian are the trainers. So I think Ophidian was like flatter next time, tuck your head in, kind of thing, get back up. Like, all right. So I get in, go for the second back bump. So like when I landed, my head like went clunk, like I was the back hit, and then like the back of my head like bounced off the mat. I was like, oh fuck, and it was like a good bounce. I was like, oh man, I got like up. I don't know if I slightly concussed myself. I don't think it was that bad, but man, I felt like way nauseous. Like, dude, got back on the ring apron in line, and TMI, like I got a little sick and I had to like swallow it back. So I'd stay in line, man, because I'm like, I'm not getting out of this line. But man, I was like feeling kind of like weary for a bit. Like it was until I got to like my next drill that I like still was feeling like shit. But dude, that first bump, like it bounced back in my head. I was like, oh God, that was the worst.
You know what is also cool? Because I heard about your story. The thing I noticed that we got lucky with is they were all very supportive, especially when we were green. Like you see WWE do it like, hey, this is, you got to do this, you got to do that, and you'll see the trainers get a little pissed off. But I remember I read Shinsuke Nakamura's book, and like I've heard other stories, other places they'll just chew you out if you're not tough enough. You're not gonna stay here. Like you got to be really thick-skinned. So that's the one thing I like about our area. They're very cordial with you, very patient, and they're willing to tell you like, hey, this is exactly how the move should be. Don't mess it up or every time I walked in the ring, I was like, you know what, I could die in here. Like a lot more than any other sport. So I always took it very serious. But damn, that tryout, man. Shit. I couldn't walk for a week after that. It was brutal. But again, I enjoyed every moment of it. It wasn't for me. It was a long time to figure that out. But man, you hit the ropes, you hit the ring. I think aside from a regular body slam, that's the most painful bump I ever took. Everything's fun, even when you're getting hit and you're gonna get hurt, but you're like, it's camaraderie. Who there did you really connect with? That either a trainer or a person that you were just wrestling with?
I can't remember the dude's name. He was like this really big, like heavy set dude. He trained already. I think he trained at CZW, maybe some other schools, but yeah, he was a really, really great guy. Like he was like super supportive. Like he knew like I was like, oh, like I was getting in pain quicker than other people probably, and I was just like really feeling it and just being like, oh God, I'm like, is this for me? I'm like, I'm just here. Like I said, I might not have like super high aspirations. I have respect, you know, for the business and the sport and everything. And he was always super supportive. I mean, everybody was. I mean, Mike Quackenbush was like super supportive. I mean, I'm like, I watched this guy in the ring for years. I have like tapes, DVDs of him, and then here he is, like, you know, a foot away from me, like being just like super supportive. And yeah, like I said, like, you know, like he's, you know, you said the move is done this way. It's done like this way, you know, but not, I mean, strict, but not like, you know, not like a, I don't want to say the name, not like a Bill DeMott, supposedly. You know? Everybody has their ways, you know, but as you said, you and I were fortunate, you know, to have those kind of trainers. And I remember we did this one thing where we learned like a sequence of moves, and then we had to do it in the ring. And I had hurt myself earlier that day, and I think I may have a hernia because of it, because it felt like it. I was like, I remember doing some kind of drill in the ring, and I don't know if I was supposed to like rolling backwards, flipping backwards, whatever we were doing, but like my legs like came like way over my head. Like I felt like this, it was like this, like, and I was like, oh man, like, and Quack was like, man, he's like, that sucks. He's like, I did something similar in the ring. And he's like, and I was 34 when I did that. He's like, so I imagine you're really hurting right now. And I'm like, yeah, like, so these guys are awesome, man. They pull out these mats, they laid me down, they're like stretching me out, they're pulling my legs, they're like, you know, not being, you know, they're being mindful of like what they're doing, but they're really like, and it felt good. Like they were like stretching me. I could feel the pull, like the stretch, but I knew I'd like fuck something up. I was like, dude, I was like, man, something still doesn't feel right. But then got to the portion of the class where you're going to do everything on, you know, everything is like upper body, you know, it's just like, you know, Quack was like, all right, Art. He's like, I think you could do this. He's like, it's not a lot of leg involvement. You're just standing upward. He's like, I think you could do this. He's like, you just, you know, we're going to do everything with hands and stuff, upper body. We learned like collar, elbow tie up. And then I think it was into like a wrist lock and a headlock. And then I forget what the last move was. This is like, I don't know, 6 years ago at this point. So I'm really trying to remember some of this, but it was like a sequence like that. So you had to go through each classmate, you know, you like everybody, like you had to go after everybody and do the sequence. And like, I had this bad habit of like, you know, it's collar and elbow. And I'm like grabbing like, you know, different parts of the arm, and like one of the trainers, I think, was like, gotta grab the elbow, man. Like, you know, you grabbing the arm, it's collar and elbow. I partner up with one of my classmates, this girl, his name is Savannah. And like Quack is like standing like right near us. It's like, cause he's just like observing the whole class, but he's like right in our vantage point. I brain farted again. And like, I grabbed her by the wrist, and like, she just went right across my face. Really like shoot. She like did this shoot slap. And Quack was just like, oh shit. And I was just like, oh my God. She's like, I'm sorry. She's like, but you grabbed my wrist. I guess it's like an instinct. And right then and there, I was like, I learned to do the elbow, you know. So after that, we had to pair up in the ring. So like 3 on each side of the ring, up on the ring apron. So I get up there, and it was a collar, collar, elbow tie up, wrist lock, headlock, and then another move, and then someone takes a bump. I don't know why I did this, but I'm like, I'll take the bump. Right after, after I just hurt myself, right? But I'll take the bump, I'll show these guys, whatever. I know, so dumb. So I partnered up. I partnered up with this guy Michael, who I haven't talked to him in a while, but we became Facebook friends. He's another guy I connected with. The guy's really cool. He's like close to my age. He's like a roller derby referee and stuff. The guy's like super cool. Like, so we ended up partnering up. So we could lock up. I think I took the wrist lock, and then I put him in the headlock, and then he did whatever move to me, and then he did like a clothesline something, and I took the bump, and as soon as I hit the bump, I was like, ah. Quack's like, all right, Art, go to the bleachers. I did, You know, it sounds so dumb, but I got to roll out of the ring. I had to. There's no other way to get out the ring, but I did the roll out. Like, didn't fall on the floor because then I really would have fucked myself up more. But I rolled out the ring, just like walked to the thing, and just I think I did like 3 or 4 weeks. I had to stop because that injury just like that just did me in, man. I could not like train out. I could not train it out. I knew in a week it was still gonna feel like, you know, I'm saying, how am I gonna train? How am I gonna lift someone up or do this? I'm like, not, you know. So and then my father had a stroke months ago, and then he passed away like around that time. So it was a really crazy like time period. So I emailed Quack. I was like, look, this happened. And I'm like, I'm still hurt. And I'm like, you know, I don't have insurance to get this looked at. I was like, I just have to like tough it, whatever. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I basically was just like, you know, I have to stop, you know, training. I was like, I understand there's no makeup course, there's no refund. I was like, I understand all that. I'm like, but there's no way I can come back and train like this physically. Like, even if like I get over, you know, like, you know, father's passing and all that shit, it's like physically, yeah, I just was like, I can't do this. So, you know, he wrote back. He was really compassionate. He was really empathetic. He was very, you know, just really wonderful dude. You know, he was really sad, you know, for my dad passing away, and it was sad that, like, you know, I was like injured to the point where I couldn't come back and stuff, or, you know, all that kind of thing. So they ended up sending me a card. It's really nice. I have it somewhere still. The dojo sent me a sympathy card.
Oh.
And everybody was like, "You're always part of Chikara family. You know, we always remember. You know, you training with us. You're the best. You know, we were doing that one move where the one guy gets on his back and like puts up his arms and legs and like lifts up the dude. You know, like kind of like lifts up the guy, whatever.
The stretch.
Very, like, luch. Yeah, you see that lucha move thing. So I was paired up with this really tall fucking, like super fucking tall, like almost like that, like basketball player height, just fucking tall. I was just like, oh my God, like, how am I gonna do this? And I had so much trouble just trying to balance him, trying to coordinate, grab, you know. But like, you know, those guys were awesome. Like even, you know, like your classmates are like, so they're like the best, you know, like in some schools, like these guys were like, come on, like, just, you know, you guys could do it. Like, just come on, just, you know, like we're always rooting each other on. I think that was the vibe in general with Chikara. But like, finally got it, man. I finally balanced him up, man. And he was balanced fine. And I had my legs up, but you know, I wasn't shaking as much anymore, you know, like and like, once I got him up, I was just like thinking, I was like, holy shit. I'm like, I have him balanced. I can't believe it. And everybody was like, yeah, you know, like, oh, you know, one thing I got out of that experience was, you know, I mean, I already respected wrestlers and wrestling and stuff, but man, I'm like, I really respected wrestlers and wrestling a hell of a lot more after those classes, man. I really had a whole new level of just admiration and respect, and like what these dudes do. Cause like you said, it was like, you devote a lot of time to that. Like, I mean, I was working full time. So like, go Saturday, and then Sunday I was like laid out. Like, I could not do anything Sunday. Like, I'd come home Saturday and just feel like I'm fucking tired and sore. And then like Sunday, I'd still be kind of like, I think I could do something. I don't know, or fuck it, I'm just gonna not do anything today. You know? So I feel like I had a commission. You know, sometimes I feel like really sick. You know, I like throw up a lot after training and stuff, man. Like, not there. Like, I get home.
Yeah.
Like I took a train and a bus, and like by the time I get home, I'm just like puking. I'm just like so sick. I'm like, I don't feel like eating. I don't feel like doing anything. Like, oh, let's go out. I'm like, no. I'm like, you go out. I'm like, go find your friends to go out. I'm sorry. I'm like, I can't do anything. Like, I am fucked. You know.
I tell people all the time, it's all real. Even though the determining factor, who wins this and that, every move. I think my biggest issue when I first showed up was, it's kind of like when I first started doing jujitsu. I was really concerned about messing someone up, that I didn't want to break an arm. I didn't want to hurt them. So I think that's what it took me a lot longer to get comfortable, because it's people I don't know. These guys have been training. They've been friends for years, but I'll never forget the rep came in. I had two really good moments. I had a lot of good moments, but 2 moments that really instilled in me the life. The first one was when the rep trained us before they were at the school full time.
Yeah.
And Maven Bentley was there, Jimmy Rave was there, Joe Gacy. I believe he stopped by for that one particular class, but it was the old school. This is how we're gonna do it class. It wasn't just
Yeah.
do the stretches, do the rolls, and then let's hop into international or etc. So we were doing like I think we had to do 500 squats as a class together, or we start over.
Oh wow.
And there
They
was
did that
no
thing.
there, and other schools that's normal. You got to do 1,000 squats
Yeah.
before you can get
Yeah.
going. But man, a
Yeah.
lot of us were not in squat shape, and that was like the first thing I was like, all right, I got to get my squats in. Shinsuke Nakamura put that in pretty bluntly. And then the rest of the class was a lot of like, you got to be on par for this. It was just more intensity. And then the second one, there's a kid, he's not a kid, his name's Jordan Oliver. But I was
Mm.
reffing that particular match, him and one of his really good friends. And it was just, it was one of the greatest spectacles I've ever been a part of. It's a small crowd.
Yeah.
It's not that,
Yeah.
but these guys are killing each other. The run time
Right.
going. There was just one thing I didn't know refs didn't do. So whether or not the ref knows the outcome or they don't, for the 3 count, they never really hit the mat for 3 unless it's the end of the match. So they'll go 1,
Yeah.
2, and if they don't know, they make it a point to not hit the ground. They'll swipe
Yeah.
or they'll like, oh wait, no. So me being a jackass, I know the outcome, but I don't know that. So I'm hitting 3. The guy's lifting his shoulder, and the crowd, the bell, and the commentator thinks it's over. I was like, no, it's a 2 count. It's a 2 count. I must have did that false finish like 3 times and just sucked
Oh man.
the unit out. But they told me
Yeah.
afterwards, like, man, just next time, so that kind of kills the crowd. But they had such a great match, it didn't even matter. But
Yeah.
it's all real. Every hit, every
Definitely
slam,
is.
it's
Yeah.
wood and metal. And that
Yeah.
worst thing I took was a body slam. It sounds crazy, suplexes and crazy flips and all that. Oh, and
Mhm.
the turnbuckle. First day I learned, don't hit the turnbuckle for real. That
Oh
pad
yeah.
useless. So
Right.
here you are, you're at MGK, you just tried to do wrestling, you're married, and Philly is not your scene. And you get this idea to move out to Texas. What was the culminating factor? What was the moment you were like, you know what, I need a fresh start again? It's not the first time you had to do it, but this is a lot more dramatic from, okay, I need a job change versus let me move across the country. I need a 100% restart on my life. What was happening for you at that time? And what was that moment you were able to go, let's do this, I'm going for it?
Yeah, things were feeling stale for like years prior. I'd say like for like 5 years before, I was starting to feel a little stale with like jobs, what I was doing for a living. I mean, the radio thing helped. That actually like made things really, like interesting and get me into working more and stuff. But with the graphic design, I was like just getting stale with that, and Philly was just too familiar at that point to me. And I was like, I've been here for a long time, but I was starting to think of like, where else I could move. I thought about the West Coast. I went out there in 2010 to visit some friends, and they're like, oh yeah, you should come out here. It'd be cool, and to like live out there. I saw like what prices were for rentals and stuff, even like around the Bay Area, like not even far away from the Bay Area. It was like pretty expensive still. So I was like, well, I don't know if I'm really into that, but I was like, I'm still thinking about wanting to move. And my best friend Jen, she was living in Austin at the time. She had moved down there like a couple years before. She was living in Los Angeles. Then she moved down there, and she had some friends in Austin that she'd visited before. And she was always saying how like it was a cool city, and she tried to get me to visit there before, and I just didn't make any time for it. So when she was up in Philly living with me and Hannah for a while, she was on her way. She was going to move back to Austin. So she was like, oh, you should take a 2-week vacation and come down and check it out. No pressure, but see what you think of it. And what really also push the moving thing was the house that we were renting in South Philly in Point Breeze. The lease was going to end in October. And prior to that, they'd been trying to sell the house. They'd been trying to sell the house, the property manager. So I remember just thinking like, well, I was like, they're probably gonna want to sell the house anyway. I was like, and I'm not really married to this neighborhood. So October, it was like October. So yeah, October, our lease was gonna end. So I was like, all right, think about moving, by then, whatever. So we were already starting to pack up the house and clean things up. And we went to Austin, and I really enjoyed it down here. I really liked the city and the vibe, like the people, the nature. It was just like it's a part of the country I hadn't been to before. I'd been to the West Coast. Hadn't been through much of the Midwest, but been up and down the East Coast. So this was like a whole new world to me. I was starting to like think about, planting early seeds in my head about, can I live down here? Would it be, it's nice to visit, but would it be cool to live here? Like, how's the jobs, how's the living situation and stuff? So, and I'd already been talking about it. I was like, I think Austin could be the next destination. And a lot of friends were like, what are you talking about? It's like, just stay in Philly. Like, why do you want to move, to Texas? Like, what's down there? I'm like, well, Austin is a really cool city. And it's like, I need a change and everything. So I went in November, took another 2-week vacation down here and thought, well, let me come down and see how I like it, and also I have a list of apartments I can look at that I got off Craigslist. I didn't know where those places were. Like, I only knew a certain part of Austin, but it's easy. It's a small city, and it's really easy to learn your way around. I found an Airbnb at this apartment complex. Actually, the complex I'm living at now is where I Airbnb'd when I came here. It was like, I guess like 5 years ago at this point. I remember looking for a place to stay, and I thought, well, I want to find a place that's like close to the city. And I remember looking at the map, and it's like, oh, they have bus routes that get to the city. Like, I wasn't familiar with the neighborhood or anything, but that's all I was looking at was like proximity to downtown and such. So yeah, so we came down here, we stayed at this complex, and I liked the area, and I liked that we could take the bus shelters are like right outside, the complex, could take buses downtown or anywhere. So I had these list of places to look at, but I remember asking Hannah, I'm like, what do you think about these apartments in this complex? And she's like, oh yeah, it's good. I was like we can ask here, about, if they have a place, that we can rent out. So I talked to the leasing manager and said, hey, we're Airbnb here, but I'm also looking for a place here possibly to move here. I was like, can you show us an apartment? So they showed us one of their demo apartments, model places. And, I was like, oh, this is a nice space. And so we filled out an application, and they approved it right away. Said credit's good and everything. So, and I said, well, I was like, if we were to move here, it wouldn't be till February. So they accommodated that. They're really nice about it. The deposit was like not as much as I thought it was going to be, and free internet. It's a nice thing. The big sell. So I came back after the November trip and was pretty much like, hey, like, we're ready. We signed a lease. We're going to be here for another 3 months. And yeah, I mean, the big thing was Jen's down here, and that was like a big thing. She's like, oh, I won't, but she was like, I think this would be a good fit for you. She's, she told me how the city was and everything. With her, she's like, she's like family to me. She's a really important person in my life. So we left for Philly in February 2017.
Then what's the first steps that you have to take? Because that's not an easy move, regardless. That's half across the country. You got all your stuff. You got to make sure all your business in Philly, is like, hey, we're done. Like, how was getting a job down there after that kind of?
Sort of. I didn't have a job for a while because when my father died, I got some money from his like life insurance. He had a house in Jersey, in Old Bridge, and he paid that house off. And his wife basically was like, I'm going to stay in the house. I'm going to keep the house. She's like, but I'll buy you out. So she gave me like half of what the value of the house was. So I had all this savings and stuff. So when I first came down here, I actually had met somebody prior to. I met somebody in November when I was here, and like a friend of a friend, and he worked for like a promotion company. It's like a concert security, basically. And he was like, hey man, he's like, I got a job for you when you come down, when you come here and settle in and stuff and all this stuff. I was like, oh, that's awesome. So I was already like, hey, I got a job down there. And so I had some like job leads when I came here, but because of how I was financially, I kind of was just like, I'm just gonna just settle for a while. So I didn't work for a long time. I was just kind of like just living.
Do you feel like that was therapeutic for you to relax, just live off the savings and just take a step back and take a breath of fresh air? Was that what you were kind of looking for, you think?
Yeah, I think that helped because I had already been doing it in Philly for a bit. I mean, I was working up until I was working 2 jobs. Well, I had a few jobs. I had 2 design jobs and a radio job. So one of the jobs I quit up until about like a couple months before I moved and stuff. So, but I was already kind of like in sort of like a relaxed mode in my head. And yeah, when I came down here, I think that was very helpful and therapeutic because I've been working straight on through since I got out of college. I was fine doing that's what I wanted to do, but I just like newfound freedom. So I think that was a big help to just have that rest period and just kind of get to do whatever I wanted to or not wanted to and stuff.
I think it's about the time I started seeing you on Facebook because beforehand, like I said, we would always talk. We saw each other, you post something. But when you started doing your Facebook Lives, that's when I started catching on. I started learning more about you. And that's also when I started just enjoying your rants. Because sometimes you go on, somebody would do something stupid in the city and you'd go off on them and it'd be the most hilarious thing I'm watching. Like I would literally have moments where I'd be in my room doing homework or I'm doing some type of work and I just like, oh, ours on. And it just hear you in the background. So now you're starting to use the YouTube. You're starting to actually say like, hey, let me try and come up with the next thing for me. So why did you say, let me try the podcast? And how did that roll into the music from what you were doing?
The podcasting I had done many years before in they were like 2007, 2008, maybe like even up to like 2010. I was doing wrestling podcasts, and me and a few friends, we had a website, and we would write about wrestling. We would scour the internet for news, and then like post it ourselves, like on our slant or whatever, or take whatever. And I was going to like a lot of shows, like CZW and Ring of Honor and 3PW and WWE, like anything that was in the city, I was going to. So I would do show reviews on our podcast. And then I ended up getting guest spots on like other people's podcasts because they were like, oh, you saw Cage of Death? Like, can you come on and talk about it? So the podcasting thing I did like years before. And then I stopped. I just like stopped doing it because we stopped doing this podcast. And so I didn't really have any interest to do it on my own. Like I probably thought about it, but just never really pursued it. When I was going to CSB, mentioned before, me and my friends, we had a podcast or a radio show. Did that for a while. And then again, had like a space of time before I started doing one on my own, which I did last year, which I haven't done in a while. I keep wanting to like restart it, but I ended up doing like the video stuff. And I don't know, it's been like over a year since I've done like the podcast I did last summer, but I had a lot of fun doing them. And I did like various subjects, and it's so funny. People introduce me and be like, this is Art. He does a podcast. It's like, I haven't done a podcast in so long. It's like I'm doing this music and other stuff, but people seem to remember the podcast, even though it's only like, I don't know, I only did like 12 episodes, I think. And I don't know why I stopped, like if it was because of the music stuff that I was getting into or whatever. But I just kind of, I would like, you know, I do like one every week or every other week. And then for some reason I just like stopped and just got into other stuff, which is probably primarily the music stuff.
So what sparked in you to say, let's actually make a song? Because as a musician, as somebody that plays, there's always a riff or a sound that comes to me. Like I will always hear something right before I'm about to fall asleep. And it will be so good, at least in my head. You know, when you record it or save it, you're like, well, that's not as spectacular. But the spark of creativity is always going. You'll be in the shower, you'll be sleeping, or you'll hear a riff and then you'll think of a counter riff. There's always something. So what made you go, okay, let me actually start creating and actually recording, and just walk us through that whole process?
I had many attempts at doing music, like from when I was in my early 20s in art school, and then years after that, but never really committed to like making actual music or putting anything out or confident of it. And so when I got like my Apple, when I got my iMac and my iPhone and stuff, like, you know, I found GarageBand and I was like, oh, like, yeah, this is something you can make music with, I guess even record with. And I would always like dick around with the apps and stuff, but I never really like got into it or like really learned it. And I just remember like I'd open it up once in a while on my phone and be like, yeah, I want to learn this thing, but you know, I don't like whatever. And then the pandemic happened. I laid off from my job and started getting unemployment. So I'm like, well, I have all this free time. But prior to that, I was already starting to like open up GarageBand. And I just remember like, I found like the sound packs and I just started like playing with like the loops and stuff, recorded them. They were like rock-based songs, actually, what I came up with. I was like, found like these like rock packs or whatever. So and I made like a few tracks and stuff. And then I was like, oh, I'm like, you know, like they have all these loops. I'm like, I could just pull these loops. So like I just taught myself like, you know, all right, let me just arrange these loops, like pull like certain sounds, what works with what. And then before I knew it, I was just like creating all these different songs. And you know, I'd create like 2 or 3 in a night sometimes. I was getting really, really excited about it and stuff. And it'd be like, oh, this sounds good. It sounds good. And then I had a SoundCloud account that I was using for years because I would put my air checks on there. And I would be like, oh, I'm like, this is how like my air checks if I need to like play them for somebody or, you know, for a job or something or whatever. And so since like they hadn't been like listened to in a while and I wasn't using them for a while, I took I still have them saved, but I took all of them down off the SoundCloud. I just cleaned my SoundCloud out, started putting these music tracks on that I was making. And I started getting comments, like actually getting some comments from people like, oh, you know, this sounds really good, whatever. And started getting some followers. And then it just went from there. Like I started getting like really excited and confident about it. I'm like, oh, this sounds good. You know, I was getting really into like electronic music more at that time, like vaporwave and future funk and synthwave and little electronic subgenres and stuff. Yeah, it just went on, just spiraled from there, or snowballed from there, I should say.
So the first song I could find on the SoundCloud was Curbside Salvation. Was that the first song that you actually made, or was that just the first one you were like, hey, you know what, I think this has potential, let me throw it out there and see what happens?
The first song I made was it was a very classic rock sounding song. So I gave it like a really funny title. I think I called it like Rock and Roll Coochie Mama or something, like just some sort of like silly title, because it really sounded like a classic rock song. But but quickly I started like getting more into like electronic. I had some early tracks, but probably like that from that, like that song Resin Ball. That's probably like the first song. That's probably like when things started getting like feeling like serious, you know, like I like putting that song together. And that was a song that people were like, wow, I like that song and it sounds cool. Or that's, you know, that's really interesting how you put it together or how it sounds. And it's, you know, it's it's like this beat and it's like these like chimes and then like the sitar comes in and it's, like just kind of like these high sounds, these high like synthy sounds and stuff, and kind of ethnic drum that it was. But it was one of those things where I was like, oh, I like to, like I like to take like whatever sound, like whatever, if it sounds good together, it's like, oh, here's like this here's like this Chinese string instrument. Sounds good with the synth part, kind of thing. But if it sounds good, I'll be like, yeah, I'll put it together, and someone will be like, wow.
Now you're getting to the point where you have enough for an album, and you're just it just seemed to me that you were dropping left and right. Like every time I turned around, there was new music, and it felt like you finally got a groove to it. Having seen your success now, I remember where you were reaching out to different companies and different people trying to get it out there. You even have your music, I forget which album, I apologize, but you even have music on like cassette and CD and
Oh yeah,
forms.
yeah.
So when you're like, okay, you know what, I really want to pursue this music avenue, or at least see what I can get with it. For someone like me, I'm starting from scratch. So what did you do? How did you go about it that would be beneficial to somebody else that has music and is trying to get started? Like what were your first avenues to the point where you can say, hey, I got physical copies of my sound. You can hold it.
I was doing, I think it was around like it was like a year ago actually. It was August like 2020, and I'm getting I'm getting a little bit of exposure on SoundCloud. I was like, but then I knew about Bandcamp. I had friends that used Bandcamp for years and like said it was a really good site, and I read a lot of good things about it. So I started releasing my stuff on Bandcamp and was starting to get a little more, reception on there. And then I decided, well, let me maybe I could find some like artists or labels in Austin. Found this one label. They don't exist anymore. There was a lot of drama with it, but there was a label called Holla Jams. And it was like and they were like here in Austin. I got in touch with them. I just emailed them or contacted them through the Bandcamp. And they were like, oh yeah, they're like, we like your, I sent them the Resin Ball song. Like, oh yeah, we like this. So like we have 2 sites. We have a site where we put out albums and we put out singles. So we'll put this out as a single. So already off the bat, oh shit, that's great. And they're like, oh, we're all on Discord. You should join up on Discord. So Discord is like where I found like many artists and stuff who I came in contact with and ended up collaborating with. I ended up like, oh, the person on this Holla Jams, they're like, I was wanting to put out an album with them, and they're like, well, we're kind of backed up for like a month or two. They're like, but for now, they're like, we know a couple people that we'll contact, or you can put your music out with. So through them, I found 2 other labels, one who I'm still like in good contact with, but through that, I found these 2 labels, and one put out an EP. And then one they both put out EPs of mine that I had. They were like I already had them out. So I didn't have to like put anything together, for them on the spot. So, but Discord is really like where I found people to network with, to get stuff out, like through their labels. That cassette that I'm on, it's called Ominous Music. It was this artist's name is My Sister's Fugazi shirt. It's actually based out of Philly, but I forget he lives in a suburb. I forget what suburb he lives in. So he put out this compilation called Ominous Music, and it was Vapor Grave, as he called it. So he put out a call for action on Discord and Twitter, was like, hey, if anybody wants to be on this compilation, just send me a track. So I sent him a track, and he was like, oh yeah, he's like, I like this a lot. I'm going to include this. And then part of the thing was like, oh, it's going to be released as a cassette. So I bought 2 copies. I gave one to Jen, and then I have a copy, because I was just like, geez, I'm like, this is crazy to see your name and your song on a tape like that. Like it's crazy. It's like, so, whether it's Reddit or Discord, but find find a server or a group or a thread, that pertains to your whatever music you're making or musician thing. Maybe even on Facebook. Like on Facebook, I belong to a few like Austin, most wanted musicians or something, or some other kind of music-based stuff like that. But like I said, I think Discord's the most receptive thing for me.
And I just want to really put it out there for everyone. I forget what musician it was. I want to say it was Billy Corgan, or it might have been Jack White, but to physically hold the music. Like, I know everything's going digital, but vinyl, CDs, cassettes, to physically hold that form of media. Even with CDs, I know it's still technically digital and a laser, but there's a little bit more pride. There's a little bit more sense of like ownership when you can physically hold it. So what were some of those deals like when you were doing the singles, or when you did an EP, an album release on these labels? What do those contracts look like? I don't think it's as complicated as a record deal, but still, I would assume there's still legality you really have to look into.
Things have been really simple with it. I haven't had like too many deals as far as like anything that's very complicated. The cassette deal, that money was donated to I forget what charity, but it was like a local charity. Like he had stated in the beginning, like, it was like pre-order. So the money made off of it was basically going to production of the cassette. So that's what that was. And then anything else was I did business with this label called Civic Duty, which I'm actually still going to do business with them. And they released one of my EPs, and then I was on one of their compilations, and then I did a remix of one of their singles, and then you put out like a maxi single, and I was like, one of my my remix was one of the remix tracks. So here's how much you made. It wasn't like it got ripped off or made less, but like I forget, he paid like one way, then like figured it out another, but like it was always like very straightforward. And he'd like send me an email like, this is how much was made off of each, or this is your share from each release bit, whatever, and stuff. So but all my stuff is, I make sure it's like all rights reserved, because they'll say, because the Civic Duty guy was like, oh, he's like, I do this because there's so many ways you can like do the rights on Bandcamp. He's like, oh, I do this one, like some rights reserved, whatever kind of. I think he does it so like he does it on his stuff. I think he does it where like some rights reserved, but like you can take my work and manipulate it your way. You know what I mean? Like, because that electronic music world, everybody remixes everything. I'm cool with that, but if it's going to be sold, then I want to get like compensated for it. So I put all rights reserved. So when I told him, and when he does another release for me soon, I'm going to say the same thing. I'm like, make sure you do all rights reserved for I've made the most money if I off of Bandcamp than anything else. I've made very little money on Spotify, and I've made so little money on Spotify, I can't even withdraw it yet. Because the withdrawal limit is like a certain amount. And so yeah, Bandcamp is that's where it's real, folks. Like, I've made money off of that.
Man, that's inspiring to just know, like, okay, even though you can't get the money, you're still making money on Spotify.
Oh yeah, you see it. Yeah, it's true. It's like, and my friend was like, well, at least you're making money on Spotify, because I told him how much I was making. I'm like, look how much I made, dude. I'm like, I can't even withdraw this yet. It's not at the limit. He's like, well, I was like, shit, at least you're making that much. At least you're making money off of that. Yeah.
You're being heard, I think, that's the biggest
thing. That's the thing. That's the main thing, of course.
But I'd still find it interesting, especially with trademarks and rights reserved, because the Harlem Shake, that in itself was also a remix, and the DJ, whoever originally made the beat, was like, nah, I'm just happy it's part of pop culture. I'd be like, hell no, I want my paycheck, bro. Like,
yeah, oh yeah, like I yeah, for sure. Yeah,
it's all over the place. So before we get on to the songs I like and the new album, I was curious. I know you got a tattoo from Whang-od, or I
oh yeah,
correct.
Yeah, Whang-od.
Did that tattoo inspire any music? And also, could you walk us through that journey, how you got there? Because the woman's 100 years old, she's out of the States, like that. Just getting to her is
Mm-hmm.
another story in itself. So could you tell us how you were able to get that tat and if it
Mm-hmm.
inspired any of the music that you currently have now?
You know, it inspired me more personally as like, you know, with my culture, like feeling more close to my roots. Cause I always kind of felt like a black sheep about it and stuff. And I mean, I still have to learn the native language and stuff, but you know, up until a certain point, like I didn't feel like, you know, like a Filipino, whatever that means and stuff. So, but I think something like that really helped, you know, bring me closer to my culture and stuff and my ancestry and everything. But um I I learned about her years before. I was on a trip in the Philippines in 2016, and we were on our way up to this mountain province. And on the way there, we saw there's this big banner has her face on it. And my cousin was like, "Oh, she's like, do you know that woman?" And I'm like, "No." It's like, "Oh, she's really famous. You know, she's a tattoo artist. She's on HBO or something because she was on Vice. They had her on Vice." And I'm like, and it had her name. I'm like, Whang-od. I'm like, oh, I don't know who that is. I didn't even have I didn't have tattoos at the time, so I don't really think of anything of it. So fast forward years, and I had already had had a few tattoos already. So did research about her, and you know, I read how like she was like the world's best kept secret for many years. You know, like you had like Westerners would go, tourists would go, but you had to like really know somebody to get up there, and you know, like to get to her, and it was like you know, you have to really follow like ethics thing, you know, or you know. And then after the Vice special, then you know, she got big, more people went up to her, they got the banner and everything, and it's like really helped, you know. It's a farm, it's a farm village up there up in the mountains where she lives, but you know, it's that tourist attraction money has really helped, you know, that area and stuff. So um well, I was planning to go back to the Philippines in 2018 for a family reunion, and when I was making the plans for the flight, I called my mom and I was like, yeah, I want to get a tattoo from Whang-od when I go there.
Oh,
So yeah, so my one cousin, Delenn, got a couple of my cousins and said, you know, you're going to drive him up there, and so because it takes hours to get there. So arrived for the weekend, and the weekend was the whole weekend was the family reunion party, like literally the whole weekend. So then my mom was like, all right, Monday, your cousins are going to drive you up to the mountain, to the mountain village. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of it. I could look it up, but I don't remember the name of the village right now, unfortunately. So we drove like hours. I forget how many hours. We drive to this spot, like you park your car in this one spot, and so we had a tour guide. So we have to walk up this mountain. So we got up to the mountaintop, and it was already like 4 in the afternoon. And my tour guide was like, there's a line, like people go up there like 8 in the morning. There's already like a line, like there's already people going up there. And all day it's like a line of people getting in to get these tattoos, and like sheet on the wall. And there's like maybe 20, I don't know, maybe not 20, maybe like there's like a bunch of designs, like at least 10, maybe a little bit more. And it had like the design and the explanation of the design underneath. There's all these like farm huts. You could sleep over and rent like a space in these huts. It's like $9, it's like $9 US a head. So I paid for me and my cousins to stay, and they brought two bottles of gin. They're like, if you want to eat, you can go to these farmers right across the way from us. You know, you can get a whole chicken. So I bought a full chicken for like $1 or something, and they had vegetables and rice. So they made us dinner and stuff. My tour guide comes back and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir, we can't get you in. The line's long, and normally she goes till 8 o'clock, but she's going till 6 o'clock because the BBC is going to interview her tonight for a segment." The week I was there, like her birthday was kind of that weekend. I think when I saw her, she was 101 going on 102. So I had good timing because they said like that weekend she's like, it's super busy and everything. So my tour guide was like, well, he's like, I'll get you in. You'll be in first thing in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. We can get you in for your appointment. I was like, all right. I was like, I have my design picked out already. It's this one, which is the serpent. And it was like the serpent, like, it was like, it's like good luck, good prosperity, good health, good finances, kind of whatever kind of thing like that. So I was like, all right, I'll pick that. So we stayed over, we just drank gin all night and talked and everything. We were just talking all night, me, my cousins, and the tour guide, and woke up at like 6 in the morning. It's really beautiful. Like you look out, you see the fog below the mountaintop and stuff when you look out, and then you see all like the farmers getting ready. Dude, there's like, they got like spring water coming down from the mountain, like pure spring water. So they set up like these like reservoir kind of things where you just like, that's how they wash your dishes. Like the water's just streaming down like constantly. So you can just like wash your hands or wash your dishes or put a cup, and it's like cold, fresh spring water. So that's nice. I see like these little kids like chasing like pigs around like the fucking village. Took a quick shower, had breakfast. My tour guide's go, oh, are you ready? Let's go. So like we go, and like she's got this little hut, and it's like a hut off like the mountain, like mountain angle and stuff. Like you look out, like you can see like the other mountain stuff. It's really just gorgeous. So I get into the hut with my cousins and my tour guide, and then she comes in. She's got like a hoodie and she's like mixing up this like charcoal ink that she uses. And she has a stick, and then she puts like a thorn. She uses a lemon thorn, which I still have somewhere. I kind of put a stencil on it, get it all set up. And then she puts the needle into the thorn and just starts tap, 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 tap. It took like an hour. I mean, it wouldn't look like it took like an hour, but the method. Meantime, like more people are like walking in. There's like benches in this like hut. So like I look up, and like within 5 minutes, there's like people like already like in this hut, like just coming in. It's like the grandniece also does tattooing. So like sometimes like when you go in, like it'll be Whang-od and her grandniece doing tattoos, but people will want to go to Whang-od afterward, because if I could just find it here, like these 3 little dots, that's Whang-od's signature. I got the whole thing. I got her a tattoo from her and her signature. So I have the entire video documented on my YouTube channel. I gave the phone to my cousin. I'm like, can you film this? He filmed the entire thing. It's like over an hour. Like I made clips of it too. Like, so like people could just see a little bit, whatever, but I wanted the whole thing documented. So, and I put the whole thing up on my YouTube, and it's got like a lot of views actually. But it was an amazing experience, man. She's such a sweet woman. She's so gentle. Like, it's amazing, man. Like they finally like made her like, she's a national treasure of the country. So they gave her like, I don't know, like 100,000 peso and some other things and whatever. But she's for people who don't know, she's the very last of the Kalinga warrior tattoo artists. And Kalinga is a tribe. It's a tribe in the Philippines, and it's also the name of the region. And that's where my family's from. The dialect is Ilocano, so that's my roots. And yeah, she's the very last of those artists. So and she's taught, like I said, she's taught her grandnieces to carry on the tradition. And she just turned 104 this year, and she's still doing it, I guess, man. Like I've seen some posts and stuff, and there were like, there's all these like crazy rumors. Like some people people saying that she used the same thorn or whatever. Oh, she doesn't change her thorn. I'm like, well, that's bullshit. I'm like, because she gave me my thorn afterward, and you see her inserting the thorn, so like grabbing a new one, So, but I saw that a while ago on Facebook. Like somebody like me, I remember like posting. There's like a Whang-od page, and I remember posting it. Like, oh, I just got this tattoo, and like somebody got in the comment section was like, oh dude, they're like, oh no, you can get infected, man, because I'm like, no, that's not true. I'm like, you're lying. I'm like, you don't know. That's the one thing that was interesting that I never got with any other tattoo. My whole arm, dude, bruised.
Jay.
Like practically, like dude, like it started getting color red, and then dude, like it was like that purplish like yellow, like that bruising, like it was so weird, man. It took up like a whole bunch of my arm. And I wasn't like worried, like it didn't like feel like it was in pain, but I'd be like, man, it's kind of weird. Like it's just a little bit of pain, but it just like looked so awkward. And then like it went away and stuff. But like, you know, I was like putting a lot of coconut oil on it and stuff. But yeah, it was an amazing experience, man.
So you've gone from tattoos back in the Philippines to from Philly to Houston. You have your music going, and you got a couple of albums under your belt, but now you have released Lunawaii. So one,
Hmm.
you have full albums, you have EPs. What really goes through your mind when you create and say, okay, I want to drop an album versus just doing singles, which you have been doing?
I think it's based on conceptual idea. If I feel I'm going to make a series of tracks that somehow relate to each other or recorded within a certain time of each other, but I think it's more like conceptual sound. Like I think the first album I put out, or first album, it was just like a collection of songs that I saw on my SoundCloud and Bandcamp. I was like, what are the most listened to songs? Basically, looking at the like the listener stats, but like songs that I like too. So I just collected that and then made it into an album. But the next album I made, which was called Mirific Terrific, it was I wanted to make like a heavier album, or maybe like a bit of a darker sounding album. There were a few tracks that came out heavy. Some were still like had that chill vibe that I always have to most of my music. And then the Lunawaii one, that was a thing that I thought of for a while. I wanted to make a very summery type record, dedicating it to my friend Luna. And she had moved to Maui at the time. It's like making a big move from New Jersey to Maui to stay out there. And so I just got inspired by that, inspired by her. And, you know, she's a really dear friend of mine, you know, really love each other and stuff. So it was just sort of like, she was like my muse, I guess. But what I liked about it too was like, it was like, I just had this like, because I had this idea and this concept for like a sound, I feel like I made a pretty consistent EP with this. And like, it's like 6 songs and they're just all, I felt like had like this kind of like tropical vibe, but also a bit like, you know, psychedelic and sort of like close to the sound that I make too.
And I would say you did a pretty good job with that. Every song definitely has its own sound to it. Like some of the notes I took, like I can't say this right. Surfo Mouth Stars.
Oh, so Surf Foam Stars. Yeah, it's like what? It's just like it's like 3 words, but I made it 1 word basically. So,
But that one's smooth and dark. Lunawaii and happier. I said commercial zone, but it was more of like a beach Hawaiian feel to it.
yeah,
Slow
for sure.
It's a weird. I don't know if you know your video games, but do you know Hideo Kojima?
I know.
So he is a world-renowned video game creator for this series called Metal Gear Solid, and it's a very distinct game, very stealth. But anytime you hear something that reminds you of the game, it just sparks in you. It's like Hideo, and that's what I got in that one. Pipe Dream was also a video game sound. Palmline, it was tribal, and then Orspasm was like just a nice little weird tint of sound that just blasts.
Yeah. Cool.
Creating these tunes, which one I would say holds the most grandeur to you, either because it was a pain in the ass to make, or it was real fun, or which one always sticks out as like this would be the first single if I were to drop this commercially?
I think I dropped Pipe Dreams as a single, and sort of as just something I think I wanted to put out to represent the album, and it was something that I was really happy with, and I thought was like a really good direction to like introduce the album to for people. I don't think I can think of like one particular track. I think the whole album in general was a bit of a labor of love. I produced the tracks. I produced like 3 demos in, I think, like mid-June, I guess. Was it June or July? I'm trying to think when. I think it was June. Yeah, it was like mid-June. I produced like a few demos, and then I just let them sit for a bit. and because I was at the time I couldn't think of like what sounds to put along with them. And then I think like early July I came back to them, and I thought like I gave myself a deadline. I was like, well, if I want to get these sent out to labels or get it out at a certain point, I wanted to get it out by August 13th because that's Luna's birthday. So that was like I'm like whatever with the label. I'm like, but for my own self-release, I was like, through my distributor, I want to get that date. And once I got it locked in, I'm like, okay, I have to get it ready by that time. So by mid-July, I was finishing up the demos. I finally found the sounds and the loops that I thought fit with it. And my whole thing was like, I thought the demo sounded really good already. So it was something I shouldn't really layer too much upon.
Okay. Did she find out the day of when it was released, or did you tell her ahead of time, like, hey, this is for you, you are the muse of this album or EP?
I told her ahead of time. I told her about 2 weeks before because the album was finished by then. So one day we were on video chat. I was like, I have something to tell you, and I told her, and she loved it. She was really touched by the whole thing, and I told her when it was coming out that she wanted to hear it right away. So I just put everything on I put like these MP3s of the tracks on the Google Drive on a folder, and I just like sent her the link. I'm like, here you go. So she had the album already like 2 weeks before. She had already heard it by then, before and everything, and she loved it. And so yeah, I told her that, yeah, she was the inspiration, she was the muse, and that was like her my gift to her and stuff. So, and it was like it's a project I was really, like I said, I was really proud of. I'm really proud of the project. I'm really happy how it came out, and people who've heard it, have a lot of nice things to say about it, and seeing how consistent it sounds and how clean it sounds. And I was really happy to hear that. One of my friends whom I worked with, collaborated with, said that it was a very clean sound. And as I was saying before, I didn't want to layer too much on the demos. I thought the demos sounded good enough already. I had effects on them already, maybe throw a couple more effects if they didn't have anything, but I didn't want to like throw everything on the top like I usually do with some other tracks. And it paid off well. Like when I mastered it, it's like, I thought you can hear the sounds like much better. Certain sounds stand out better because they're not plopped on by other sounds and tracks that I've done in the past.
So the one thing you mentioned that I feel people don't really understand is different is producing and mastering. Those are two separate things altogether. And when it comes to recording process, it's a labor of love, like you said. You have to go over the same thing maybe for 20,000, 10,000. It sounds ridiculous saying out loud, but when you're editing and you're making sure it's just right, it's hours upon hours of work. So with all the work you've done, all these other albums, what was the best piece of knowledge that you had from those other works, from the other times you've created music, that really helped you this time with your focus and direction for this album?
I think it was kind of going with the less is more with most of the tracks, at least. I think some may still have like a good number of layers, but again, not as much. I was more conscious of not tinkering. How they sounded already was good. They just needed a bit more of a shine. Maybe when I was putting it through different like filters, but I was also doing like the actual EQ on some tracks, and it was easier to work with those kind of tracks. And I think I learned with this and with a few other tracks in the past that I've done recently. Like I said, I'm proud of this one, and I think like future projects I can learn off of the production I did on this one, and project it towards other pieces that I do in the future.
So there was a moment, I will get back to the album, but there was a moment, I want to say maybe a couple of months ago, where you said that you were done with the music. You were having a tirade, you were pretty pissed off. And some of the things you were saying afterwards was making sense. It's more of the labor of love, more of the struggle for actual musicians. Even if you're in it not to make money, you're just doing it for the love. There's a lot of extra work that just is unappreciated. I was wondering what was the culminating factors? What were some of the things that really broke you to the point it's like, no, I have an issue with some people and I got to put it out there on social media and let you guys know what I'm thinking, how I'm doing? Because I feel when you go live, that's a form of therapy for you. Sometimes you're just doing
Hmm.
it for fun. Other times I feel like you're really catering to the audience because, you know,
Yeah.
like I mentioned in the other video where you did that little piece on Stevie Ray Vaughan and for his birthday. That
Hmm.
was really cool. So I was wondering what was the combination, and was it as serious as it we perceived it, the public saw it, it's like, oh, he really might give up on this, or was it more of just the I need to get this off my chest, back to business?
I think it was it was the quickest retirement in history. Probably it was like a 5 hour thing before I kind of just evened out and realized things. But well, it was just really frustrating because I know there are people out there that listen to the music, you know, even if it's whatever small number or anything. I mean, any number is appreciated, such so. But I think I don't know. It was probably just something where I just felt like you put so much out there, and you find ways to promote and get people to listen, and if you get very little to no reaction with after so many things you put out, and you're just like you just get a little discouraged, like like, is it really worth it, putting all this time and effort, like for a while it feels like you're not putting any effort into it, and that's like this. It's like like if you're having fun doing it, it's like whatever, like everything else is gravy. It's like getting the response or whatever, people digging it. So but it was probably just something where I was just like, man, I'm just not getting any reception from what I'm doing, or is what I feel I should be getting, or I've been doing this for a certain amount of time, whatever. And so I just put that out there, and all the things I said, I mean, I still feel the same way. And for all the people that were like, oh man, don't quit, or that's sad if you do, or I listen, or I like it, I had some musician friends. I had one in particular who was like, thank you for saying this, like I thought this for so long, and in fact, she's leaving music to go to she's going to school to get her degree. I forget what she's getting her degree in, but she's going back, she's completely changing her direction in life after so many years of being musician, and going into being in the machine or whatever, and doing the gigs and writing the songs and putting out CDs and such, and all the promotion. But it was actually cool to see that. And I think, like, I feel like I might have had other people have with that similar sentiment, but she wrote a whole thing like just thank you for saying that, because I thought that and wanted to say that, and people don't understand, and you put all this effort and stuff. And then I had another friend he's like, well, I've been making music for 20 something years or whatever, and I have that same thing that you talk about, but I'm still gonna still making my music, and it's for people that buy, listen to the album, whatever kind of thing. So then I just kind of just came more focused afterward, and was like, okay, I'm not gonna completely quit it. I'm like, maybe I just need a break. So I just took some time away from it. I was like, still had my music out there. I didn't delete anything. I don't even know if I even produced anything. I probably did like sometime later, like recent, like maybe a week or so later, like it came back. But I mean, the frustrations were real, and like, they're there from time to time, but I think in the end, it's just the whole, if you just enjoy doing it and you're just focused on the creative part, and someone out there is gonna touch somebody in some way, and that's always like a cool thing. Like if you get a response saying, oh, it reminds me of this game or this movie, or this sound or whatever kind of thing. So but yeah, I said quickest retirement ever, or one of one of them at least.
But you said something that really struck a chord with me, and it really made me think of the importance of support from others. Because you stated, like, if you guys really support me or really think this is good, share my shit. Get it
Yeah,
out there.
yeah,
It's not that hard. It's a literal button. Even if you hit like, that does so much good on Facebook or whatever
oh yeah,
platform. But you said a lot of people like to just say, I know somebody that does something, but they don't really support and help. And that really struck a chord with me.
Well, it goes back to my radio days. I mean, I have some friends who had listened, and I posted some old photos recently for the National Radio Day stuff, and I had a couple of friends that were like, "Oh yeah, I miss listening to you on the air," but I think it was the same way, like with my friends. I think it was cool for them to say, "Hey, I have a friend who works in a radio station," but it's like, "Oh, do you listen?" It's like, "Oh, not really," or once in a while, or I had the friends who would tell me, they listen, or when one of the first things I started using Facebook Live for was the radio breaks. Like I would have it in the studio and be like, "All right, guys, like this is what I do on a Sunday night. Like, I tell you I'm on the radio, but here's what I do." So, I'd have it on. I'd do a break like live there, and then all of a sudden I have some friends who are like, "Whoa, you do that? That's awesome. That's so cool." And I'm like, "Yeah, I've been doing this for like a year now." At the time, and I have some people that are very supportive, like, you share all my stuff. I always appreciate that. Jen, my best friend Jen, she shares all the stuff. I mean, she's like the first person to like message me. And she's like, "What is this you're talking about? Not doing this anymore. Like, don't do that. Like, just take a break." Like she was the one that was like, "Take a break, just, just do that, but don't stop doing it," and I have friends that are very supportive, so I don't want to like take them for granted, like take you guys for granted or anything. But yeah, I think, but yeah, it's I think the whole like status thing, like, "Oh, I know somebody, I know a DJ, or I know the producer, I know somebody, or or that's my friend on this album and stuff." And the first question was like, "Well, are you making any money off of this?" I'm like, "Well, technically yes, but if you mean like I'm making a living, like, no, that's why I'm still working at a smoke shop," because
Coolest job in the world.
yeah, because all this other stuff that I'm doing is cool, but it's not at the status of making a living, and that's unfortunately the impressive level of doing those kind of things. But that's I remember for a while, like Jen was like, "How come you're not telling your mom about your music? You should tell her." And like she kind of knows my mom, and I said, "Well, because of this." And then when I told my mom about the music and the whole thing happened, I went to Jen. I said, "Well, I told my mom about the music, and the first question she asked was, 'Are you making money off of this?'" And Jen was like, "Yeah, I see." it's like it's like 'cause she's like, "Your mom would be so," she has like such a beautiful like rose-colored vision, where she's like, "Oh, be so proud and be like, wow, my son's creative and does this and so." And I'm like, "You gotta understand." I'm like, ever since I got out of art school, the whole thing was like, "Are you making money off of this thing?" Like it's like I'm making posters for all these bands and concerts that are coming to town, like the biggest shows ever. And it's like, yeah, how much are you doing?
How much you getting out of it?
How much are you getting out of it? Yeah, like in a fiscal sense. So, which I can understand in a sense, but at the same time, like, oh, well, he does this creative thing. Like she actually, I mean, she was supportive of the radio thing. Like when she actually saw that I was making a living and actually on the air and doing stuff, like she would listen and be like, "Hey, I'm listening to you on the station," So she was supportive of that, So because like from when she was like, "What, you want to go to school? Why do you for this? Like, are you nuts? Like, do you think you can get a job out of this?" To, "Oh, I'm listening to you at home or in the car," So that was nice, But the music thing it's still like kind of kitschy, nichey, whatever you want to say. Like, I mean, I'd love to make. I mean, serious to me, So
Back to your new album, back to what we're promoting, my man. My favorite off this album, I would have to say, is between Soul Rise and Palm.
Palmline.
You should put it phonetically next time for us
Oh yeah.
to read. But could you walk me through, especially Palmline? What was the overall goal when you started that one? What we said, it had a tribal feel. Was that something you wanted initially? It's like, I want something that's tribal, or is it just something that morphed into it?
I think that one, I was building a drum beat, and I probably was thinking tribal. It was, I mean, it was, I was kind of had that whole like tropical feel in my head the whole time I was making this stuff, and like the drums I found and put together, I thought, well, okay, yeah, this. I was like, I don't have anything like this on the album so far, So I think I can do something with this. And then I just played the drums all the way through, and built up the track a bit more, and played with the panning and all sorts of stuff. And once I came up with the drums that I liked, once that all was all set, then I started like sprinkling in like other sounds. And yeah, the sounds that I found were just, they just like made sense. It was just, just again, like very like, very like earthy, beachy. I just wanted to try to make it go with the tribal beats, and I think it came out really well.
So when you're working on these songs, what is your main focus as far as what's going to be the lead? So a lot of people always put emphasis on bass and drums.
Mhm.
This is what's holding the timing. This is what it's based around. I think the best example I would have for something like this is Queen. Everybody has their instrument. If John Deacon, with all the hits he has, most of those hits are bass driven. And then when you go to Roger, okay, that's a drum. And then you go to Brian,
Right.
okay, and then Freddie's piano. So when you start off with these songs, does it always change for you? Or when you're specifically on these, you're like, no, this one's going to be based around the drums, or this one's around the guitar. No, not guitar, the synth, as we
Mhm.
say. What was your approach to most of these songs? Like, would you say there were certain ones that was definitely like, this is what it's based on?
I'm trying to remember with these tracks, because most of the time I start off with the drum track. I like to build a nice, heavy, kind of intricate drum sound. Like, I'll put together a couple kits, or whatever, or just different percussion sounds. I'll play one and then like pair it with another one, try to build it off of that. I like very like percussive heavy, and then I think I'll either go to a bass or a synth. Sometimes I think I'll go to a synth and then to a bass, but other times I'll start with a synth track. And with the tracks on this album, probably want to say most of them, if not all of them, are started with the drums, with like a drum track, and then worked way to a synth, and then a bass, other sounds, synth type sounds, like just, yeah, I think that's pretty much how it goes. But 90% of my tracks are built off of drums, because I just love the rhythm and the drum track. That's like just, the heartbeat of everything. So
With this particular album, you having so many influences, but this being electronic, and I've already made the reference, like it sounds like a video game or something you can loop on a movie. Where do you feel like you're pulling your influences for, especially for this album? Not saying, the part where you said it was inspired, but I'm saying musically, who are you looking up to? It's like, you know what, that's something I would pull. Like every time somebody plays a guitar song, it's like, oh, A, G, C, or
yeah.
it's like, oh, that's an AC/DC thing, or the Beatles would have done this, or etc. Who are you pulling for your electronic work, especially for this album?
That's interesting, because, oh man, I do have a lot of influences, and there are a lot of artists I like, and I'm not really conscious of who I'm pulling from when I'm making these tracks. It's just I guess just working with the electronic medium. Never really thought I would work with the electronic medium as much as I do, because I was always like guitar based. I always wanted to be guitar based, and I still like to play guitar, and I've played like band setting a couple times and everything, but but the whole production aspect of just taking these sounds and just piecing them together, and I talked about this in the last video about being like more influenced with like maybe like production type deals instead of, rather than like a musician. I think I talked about like how like Billy Corgan produces his albums and stuff, and how like Butch Vig produced those albums, like Nevermind and like Sonic Youth albums and stuff. And I love Grimes. I love her music. I love how she produces her stuff herself. I love I love it comes from her, like the background, like I don't know how much of a trained background she has. I think a lot of it's self-taught. So I think that's really cool, because it's like these like unorthodox ideas, the interesting ideas that might be held back by someone who would have maybe, with a more refined like music education or production education, but I kind of like look at her and I kind of like how she produces her stuff. So I kind of like look at kind of like her stuff, like her music and like how she produces her music and everything. So, but as I said, I really can't pull like a particular artist, but I mean, if you hear like certain bits, it might be from like, I love this band called Ozric Tentacles. They're British space prog band. They're instrumental. It's like guitar, bass, keyboard, drums, and it's just like play like really amazing music. You should definitely check them out. And like Humphreys McGee, that's like another similar type of band. Like just like the elements of like of rock and like synthesizer and just like all like the things that they combine. I always like that kind of element. Like anything like rock based, like electronic based. Like when that was really coming together, especially like in the 90s, that was like really cool to see that come to fruition even more, because I hear that little bits, like growing up, and like, but it was always like one thing or the other. So like when things like started to combine, I thought that was really cool, because I was like, these are like two like heavy sounds that could be meshed together, and like you heard it here and there, but like, to hear it regularly, or to use as like a good portion on tracks, I think that's like a really good marriage of sounds.
And you did mention like your rock roots, like other songs like Iron Kratom and Scar Taste, like you can hear the rock influence. And then the 90s R&B tune was Mirage.
Yeah.
And man, I was going to ask you about the cover art, but now that I know that you're the graphic artist and designer, I was like, oh, wait, that kind of kills my question. I know he did it now, because a lot of these stuff, very, it gets the vibe correctly. And we both know how important, you have to have the music and the picture match for the album cover. Like Food Court Hookup. I'm sorry, that was my favorite one. That's one
thanks.
that you've done. Could you tell me what inspired that name for that particular one? Because that's my favorite tune. So I gotta ask you, little fan, like the Mark questions. Why'd you write it? Inspired, etc. But if you could just touch on that particular one, that'd be pretty cool.
So that's one of the few songs where we was given a specific direction, in a sense where it's like, we want a song that sounds this way. And that label I mentioned earlier, Holojams, they were putting this compilation together called VHS Pop, and the cover was cool. Like I wish I had the cover. Like they deleted everything too, which sucks. But the cover was like, it was a square for like for like a CD cover, but like it looked like a VHS sleeve with like a cassette in it, and it even had like the stripes of like, it looked like a Kodak like VHS tape, like the cover and everything. But like it had a speech bubble that said VHS Pop. So they were like, oh, we're kind of doing like an 80s kind of themed, vaporwave, future funk, synth wave kind of thing. They're like, we want you to do something that's kind of in that vein, like maybe something like a little funky or whatever. Not, because they knew I'd do like a lot of like chill kind of sounding stuff. I was like, all right, well, I could do that. So I came up with the song. I came up with the beat. Then I found the synth sounds, and then I found two bass tracks. I used two bass loops in that, and I just like switched between them. But they're like real like do 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 do, like real funky. And I was like starting to build it. And I'm like, okay, this sounds kind of like a bit of a funky track, like not too much, but like an 80s kind of like, to me, sound like an 80s kind of like funk track, whatever. And luckily I didn't need a lot of reference, because I grew up listening to all that stuff throughout that whole period. So I heard so much of it. So the synth sounds like, I just putting those in, and they were like working the way they were. And then the saxophone I threw in the end, because I was like, well, like so many 80s songs have sax solos or sax bits. And I thought that sax loop worked in well. The track Food Court Hookup was, they wanted an 80s themed thing or whatever, and I wanted to go with the aesthetic. So, I remember back in the day when me and my friends would go to the Echelon Mall in Voorhees, New Jersey, and, there's the food court. Everybody meets in the food court, you're trying to like Hookup in the food court. You see some of the cute girls there that you go to school with. You're like, oh, there's that chick and there's that chick, you know. So like I don't know, like it just like kind of came to me. I was like putting stuff together, like food court, and then the food court Hookup. I'm like, all right, well, that sounds like a good title. So named it that. I sent them the track, and like they like messaged me back. Oh, it sounds great. You know, it's so funky. Like I could really hear. You know, I love the sax. You know, and the title is great. So they liked it, and then so they put on the compilation. Like I said, you know, it doesn't exist anymore. So then I released it myself because I was like, well, I'm like, I don't want this song to be lost. Like, I don't know if it was on my Bandcamp. I don't think it was because it was like it was already on their Bandcamp. So, but when they got rid of it, then I thought after a while, I'm like, oh, I should put this song out myself. Like, I'll just put it out on my distributor and get it on Spotify and Apple and all that stuff. So yeah, a lot of people do like that song. I've shared it and stuff and messaged people the song and stuff. Yeah, they really liked it and stuff. So yeah, that's another one, and I'm like happy with. I'm proud of it because I was given a direction and I followed it. And it's like, yeah, I don't need reference. I remember talking to them about it. I'm like, I don't need a reference. I could just hear in my head what I grew up listening to. So, but yeah, that's a good one.
So for this promotion cycle for Lunawaii, what are you trying to do different, or what are you trying to add to this time for it? What is the new approach again now that you have some experience under your belt?
I've been putting it out there a bit more often. I haven't produced any other music recently, and that's been a conscious thing because I've been wanting to work on promoting Lunawaii. So, you know, I put it out. You know, I put the link out every day or every other day. You know, it's a link where it takes you to a site where you can stream it from a bunch of other, you know, streaming services, and it also gives you like a section where like what sites you can purchase, you know, the digital version from and stuff. It's on a label on Bandcamp. It's called Occasionally Tapes. That they put it out first, and then I put it out myself on on the streaming services. So I'm just concentrating on promoting it. You know, I made a video for Seafoam Stars. I put that out on my YouTube. I think you've shared it. And I might make another video for another track. I'm not sure which one yet. I told you about a label earlier that I worked with called Civic Duty Records. They're based out of California. They've put out a few things for me, and I've been on a couple other compilations. They're gonna put out a single for Orspasm, but remixed. It's going to be completely remixed and have different cover art. So that's going to be another promotional ploy, but that won't be until like later in the year.
Are you remixing them, or are they going to have somebody else remix it for you?
The curator, the guy who runs the label, we've been talking on email about it. He wanted to do a remix of my track. First he was like, I could remix one of your songs or the whole thing. I'd like you to do the whole thing because I'd like to hear your version of it. And it'd be cool to have another version of it out there. That's something I'm excited about because, you know, I like remix albums. You know, I think those are cool. You know, like I've had like some 9 Inch Nails remix albums or White Zombie ones, and you know, I think it's cool that they put out a whole remix version. You know, it's cool to see like other people's visions of it and stuff. Like, if I could do remix if I wanted to, but I'd rather like someone else do it. You know, I like to get their vision of my music, and he loves my music. He was telling, and this album in particular, we had a email exchange yesterday. He said he's in Mexico, I think, right now, and he's like, man, he's like, this music fits exactly where we're staying at. He's like, it's so clean, and he's like, I think it's my most favorite of your releases, and I love hearing that because like I said, I'm really proud of this one. It's been a while since I've been really happy and proud. I mean, I'm proud of all my work for sure, but like this is something I'm really just like, you know, from all facets, like because of who it's dedicated to and who inspired me, and just the consistency. I mean, I feel cohesiveness with this album for sure compared to other releases I put out as albums, even the last one.
And it's very gratifying to have other people, especially other musicians. Sometimes they don't even have to be like the biggest thing in the world, but you have somebody saying, hey, this is a good idea.
I know, right?
The positive reception you're getting for your music, what would be the next step? Are you looking to change anything that you're doing as far as programming or buying a Yamaha? Is there something you're looking forward to doing that is going to try and help expand your reach or your capabilities when creating music?
I just started getting into learning how to use FL Studio, which I have the mobile version on my phone. I bought it months ago for like $14, and I haven't really used it much. I've been using the other DAWs that I've been using like normally for my stuff. But I just thought recently that I was looking at it again on my phone, and I'm like, man, I have to learn how to use this. And I was watching some video tutorials. I have to like really watch them more in depth and everything. But I want to use that. I want to use FL Studio because I think it's going to expand my production, my composing more, just by looking at how you can do it on their program and everything. And I think for my next, I want to learn it, and then I'm going to have time to learn it. So by the time I produce something that I want to produce something for my next single or whatever, that I want to produce something mainly off of FL. And I know a lot of like electronic artists use FL Studio and Ableton, and on Discord sometimes there's like a lot of like production chats about FL and stuff, and like I'm like lost or can't get in to it. So that'll also be cool to get in on like what they're talking about and get some tips and ideas and such. But I think that's going to help expand my music production for sure. I have my DJ controller that I still really need to practice on more and play with more and stuff. So
is it an actual turntable like the new ones they have, not like where you actually need the vinyl, but you can do scratching and do all that stuff?
It's like the newer ones. It's like just the disc, you could plug it into your laptop or your phone and stuff. It's not the old school ones, but it's like a small version. It's like kind of like a practice one, but it's like portable, like you can like bring it around and stuff. But at some point I'll want to like either get like an MPC or something, or maybe a larger DJ thing to do, like, because I want to perform stuff live at some point for sure, and I'll need like a unit up there with me, to perform and stuff. So yes, those are the things that I want to do for my expansion.
Take me 5 years out from now. What would you want to do specifically with life? Music included, I'm assuming, since we're having the whole interview on the album for this.
Right.
What's the 5-year plan, or what are some goals in the immediate now, not just music, that you really want to hit for the years out, or that the amount of time has passed?
I mean, definitely something different career-wise. That I'm not sure, if it's back into like graphic design or something, but something career-wise where I'm comfortable financially but also enjoying it. So that I'm not sure what it is yet. And then with music, I hope to have been doing it outside my house by then, like performing it like locally or anywhere. And and just to get more ears tuning in on more streams and such, and everything. So and who knows, I mean, maybe still some video stuff, but if the music, if it gets to a certain point, then I'll primarily focus on that. But I mean, the video stuff can be incorporated, of course, with the music stuff, but just be like more of a secondary element, like a promotional element and such. So
you definitely could do AMVs like added to just different movies. But bro, I really find your story fascinating, and it is inspiring, just because you're still at this stage, you're still one of us, you're
yeah, totally.
As always, last question, but the most important question I always ask. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? Someone gave it to you, it readily comes to mind. It's not something you made up or said one time, it's something that somebody said that's always stuck with you, and it's kind of like a guiding light.
it won't resonate with young folks. Maybe it will later, but hopefully it can resonate with young folks if they don't know it already. It's like, but it's like, you know, listen more, you know, like listen more to like people, you know, don't get in so much a word edgewise, or don't talk so much. Like just listen to what people say, man. Like just, you know, there's like so much great advice out there. There's a lot of people that are willing to like just give you advice. And if you listen more and like assert that advice and stuff, then you're going to get more of it. Like people, you know, same people or other people, you know, like they see that you're, you know, willing to listen and stuff, and, you know, assert that advice into your craft or your job, whatever, your career, whatever, life, you know, like you'll always get it. So just listen, just, you know, just like just be still and just listen to what people say, you know, and absorb it as best you can. But, you know, but if you're resistant, like, you know, I mean, you can have some balls, you know, of course, but if you're too resistant, then people are just going to be like, all right, you know, never mind or whatever, just find someone else who, you know,
You might
you
miss
know,
it.
yeah, you know, I mean, if, you know, there's, and you can know what like advice is and what isn't, you know, I mean, but, you know, but if it's something like constructive, you know, and just really, you know, like just, you know, just listen. That's actually one thing I remember, like one of my bosses saying, who I'm friends with, like, he was like, he'd critique all my posters or anything, like any ad I did, like for Electric Factory, like anything, you know, he'd critique before, like we put it out for proofing and stuff. He'd be like, he's like, you know, any criticism I give you, he's like, it's all, you know, it's constructive. He's like, it's not personal. It's not whatever. It's not, you know, malicious. He's like, it's always constructive. He's like, it's just, you know, telling you how to make things better and how to better yourself and your craft and your technique. So, you know, I think that's what I could definitely say for sure for anybody.
Thank you so much, Art.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you, John.
Shimko, the man,
Yes.
the legend. His new album, EP Lunawaii, is out now on all, not just streaming services. I'm pretty sure it's probably on Amazon and Netflix at this point. But guys, check it out. As always, I know we had to break this up, but it's great seeing you. It's great talking to you.
Yeah, man.
God bless you, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone else, you already know what it is. Be smart, be mindful, and God bless you. I'll catch you next time. Ninja out.